Hello, welcome to another episode of the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. You will notice the keen of eye among you that I am neither Aaron nor Joe, for which you are very welcome. I'll be standing in just for today to lead the guys through this review episode. Boyo, attempting to keep up with the mid-table Joneses and accompanied by 3,000 odd supporters, Argyle crossed the Severn to ship 5 to Cardiff City. Things began very brightly for Argyle, but barely had Glamorgan Whittaker slid Michael Obafemi in one-on-one with the keeper. But despite that rare bit of incisive play, City soon took the lead that they never looked like they'd yield, as Argyle continued to find it tough going away from home park, which we'll discuss later on. Surely Ibrahim Sissoko could have avoided his red card if he'd kept his head. Was his dismissal integral to the fleecing Argyle received, or were the Greens just too sheepish regardless? The celebratory home choir and the Sky cameras spent a lot of their time focused on who wails but Wayne Rooney in the stands. Was his absence from the touchline of any consequence? By the end, among the large travelling contingent, there was a lot of blue words as the Bluebirds subjected Argyle to some Welsh capital punishment. Here to reflect on that production, but I'll give him one anyway. The man, the myth, the functioning alcoholic, Sam Down.
Good evening. I was about to compliment you on your fantastic intro until now.
I should apologise. It's a low-hanging fruit for a joke, and it's a serious issue for a lot of people. I should have picked a better joke for the intro there. Top stats, low expectations. That's Adam Price. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. I don't care about any what was I going to call it? I don't want to call it abuse that you sent Sam's way. Any comments you sent Sam's way. I don't care if they get sent my way as well. I'm still very pleased with your intro. So you get many points
from
me.
Man of culture. It doesn't distinguish. And I would say Bodid Da to the Welsh member of the Green and White panel, but it's no longer Bodid, so I'll just ask Finn with the only other bit of Welsh I know. Sut o'i ti?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Well, I'm good. I went to the game yesterday, obviously being a Cardiff resident, but well, apart from the first 15 minutes, we'll just forget the rest, shall we?
Yeah, well, unfortunately we can't, because I'm going to ask you to review the first half for us. It seemed like at half time it might have been a bit of a mountain to climb. No, the Welsh puns have ended there. But at least Argyle might get something out of the game, and yet the second half seemed like an entirely different story. So why don't you talk us through the first half, Finn? I think all 3 of the panelists were there, were you not? Yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you talk us through the first, and then I'm sure everyone will enjoy Sam's deconstruction of the second.
Okay, so first 15 minutes look pretty good. I was slightly worried about the threat that Robinson and I don't know and Al Ghazi were causing Mumba and Edwards down the flank, and I'm sure I can get onto them in a minute. But in general, the first 15 minutes looked like okay, and actually, fairly decent. We looked like we wanted to get on the ball, and looked like we had some confidence about us after obviously the Blackburn game being the previous one. I mean, it's always hard to judge how your team's going to come back after a 2-week break, basically. But yeah, it looked okay. Didn't look like it was going to foreshadow any of the stuff that we saw. But it kind of all changed when obviously we had that Whittaker chance, and Obafemi, I mean, that's just a terrible finish. I can't say any other way. He should score. And he puts it a fair bit wide of the goal, and you think, okay, let's try and build on this. But then from then on, it kind of just felt like that was that was a bit of adversity we had to put up with, and I think we are so poor away from home. Our record is so poor away from home that we just never recovered, and we started to give the ball away in silly areas. I think the midfield was terrible yesterday. Everybody, just gaps everywhere, and it felt like it was 2 passes and they were through the middle of us. To be fair to Cardiff, I didn't think they were particularly great, but I do think I'll give them the credit. They were well organised and they did a job on us tactically. And I don't think Rooney, I know he was banned yesterday, Rooney / Shuttleworth were quick enough to react. I felt that our shape was out of place. And, you know, JB was dropping into right back at times, and Joe Edwards was like, I mean, Joe Edwards and Mumba struggled all afternoon, and particularly the first goal. I mean, Mumba's like Sissoko's gone out to the winger, which he can do, but then Mumba's not. Once he's kind of jinked past Sissoko, Mumba's still on the edge of the box. He doesn't even come out to try and to close down his man. It's kind of hard to put into words. Everyone was just really poor yesterday, and it's kind of hard to see. I mean, obviously we started the season as bad as this, but then in the last few games, obviously we've been really encouraged and seen signs of improvement. I just feel like after watching particularly that first half yesterday, it does worry me in terms of whether we are going to be able to scrap. It's all well and good being a team that's nice on the eye, but Cardiff were well organised yesterday, and we couldn't seem to deal with that. And actually, they thrived off the fact that we are more of a vibes team, if you like. You know, we like when the game is free flowing, but Cardiff were only ever going to sit in and try and make it difficult for us, and they didn't really have to do that because we made it easy for them. And yeah, I think the first half was went about as bad as I mean, it went worse than the Sheffield Wednesday game in some ways, even by virtue of Sissoko getting sent off, which we all know Perry Ng is going to wind up anybody he can. He's that kind of player. So I think Sissoko's reaction, to put it bluntly, was petulant and stupid. And whilst you could say it was, you know, it was along with that for us anyway. At that point, we could have had a chance. I mean, Cardiff were bottom of the league until we lifted them off it, or they lifted themselves off it, however you want to put it. Yesterday, but you know, once Sissoko got sent off, that was it. And I said at half time to somebody that I know that supports Cardiff, I said, enjoy this, could be 5, and well, it turned out to be 5. So yeah, it was a terrible first half.
You're on mute, Ben.
Professional as ever. I was gonna say, let it all out, Finn. It's like that wasn't so much a first half review as an act of catharsis. That seemed like. So you know, already in the first half, you're saying people weren't putting a boot in. There didn't seem to be any shape or structure, and we didn't look like we had the spirit, the gumption. But I thought it was a better showing in the first half, even with the red card and the petulance, than the second half. Sam, would you agree? How did you think the game went at half time?
Yeah, I kind of feel the game descending was kind of diminishing returns increasingly within the game. I basically agree with Finn's assessment. First 15 were genuinely good. Even then, there were a couple of moments on the counter where they looked like they might open us up, but first 15 generally were pretty good. And then obviously then it got much worse until the red card. The face of the red card for about the first 20, 25 minutes of the second half was absolutely shocking. And then when we sort of, I think effectively threw in the towel with our subs at 3-0 down, took off Randall and who else was it? Somebody else we took off. I'll check now, but just clearly with the view of resting their legs ahead of Wednesday. It was Whittaker, of course it was, who we took off. That's the first time he's not played a full 90 all season. So we very clearly made subs purely with the view of keeping them fit for Tuesday. For Wednesday, if I can make that mistake a third time, I'll be very impressed. It was very clearly a case of throwing the towel in. And then the last 20 minutes after that, we were beyond appalling, because it was only 3-0 down in the 72nd minute when we made that double sub of taking Whittaker and Randall off, and Wright and Forshaw came on. And then that last 20 minutes was a total embarrassment. We conceded a fourth, which was shortly followed by a fifth. And then it was a great save by Dan Grimshaw quite late on to prevent what would have been a sixth. Unfortunately, I don't think Grimshaw had a good game. That was his weakest game he's had by a mile since coming to Argyle. I think the first and the second, he doesn't really move. For first, maybe a bit harsh. Second, it's very savable. And then the third one, I think it's the third one, near the start of the second half, where he completely gets himself in a tangle. He comes out and tries to close the angle, but doesn't need to, because he's in no danger. If you look at how far out the player is, yes, he's moving forward, but he's nowhere near the 6-yard box. He's got a covering defender, so he could have come out to narrow the angle and just completely opens up his goal, which he doesn't need to do. So I think for a player who has broadly made a pretty good start to his Argyle career, it was pretty much a goalkeeping horror show from Grimshaw. A lot of the goals he could have done better for, maybe even the fifth, you could say, he moves quite late for as well. I think it's a bit of a, as much as that Watford game in the Cup showed his close range reflex stops can be incredible, and the save he made to stop it being 6-0 was very good. I worry if the low shots down into the corner from distance are proving a bit of a weak area for him, because we have conceded a few like that with him in goal. So not great from that regard. But, I think he's done enough that, not to drop him, but becoming a bit of a weak area, a bit of a concerning area. I know this doesn't come under the second half, but the discipline is, I saw a comment from Richard popping up there saying, including Rooney, 4 red cards in 10 league games, leadership and discipline an issue. And although that's not strictly the remit of what I'm talking about, I do think it ties into discipline, because discipline has a lot of meanings. Yes, there's discipline in the view of not picking up a stupid red card like Sissoko did, like Forshaw did at QPR. Saka, I'll give a little bit more credit for, because it was genuinely a case of very bad timing of the tackle rather than it being malicious. But it's also discipline in the sense of the lack of mental discipline we showed second half, because gone.
Sorry, I was going to say, I get it's 2-0. We're not going to do anything on Sissoko sent off. However, Jordan Houghton was brought on to shut up shop, and we did exactly the opposite, and that's a lack of discipline. I think I'm not going to put it on Jordan Houghton, but he's brought on as an experienced head to try and calm it down, and it was even worse. Which is
completely. You basically took the point out of my mouth there. We brought it on for damage limitation, and then didn't limit any damage.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of an old stuff there. If you play 6-side or whatever, and you're losing it, and you just go, bugger this, we're going to stop trying. I think there was a bit of that aspect to it in a way, and I hate to say that, but I do really think there was, because we got progressively worse and worse as the game went on, and it was absolutely shocking how bad we were in the second half. Every pass was just either under hit or over hit or out of play. There wasn't passing movement. Nobody was making runs off the ball, and I've kind of feel in that scenario maybe you have to cut a bit of slack to the players who do have the ball, because people weren't running ahead of them. But it was a bit of like a role reversal. Like 1 minute it was, Randall with the ball and JB wasn't running. And then the next minute it was JB with the ball and Whittaker wasn't running. And then the next minute it was Whittaker with the ball and, Al Hadj wasn't running. There was no, everyone was guilty of it in their own way. There was no real cohesion or coherence in any of it. Defensively, non-existent. The fullbacks, I know Rooney wants the fullbacks to invert and cut inside, but Cardiff were really directing all the play to the middle of the park. They were trying to get it to come inside, because that was where they were overloading and where they were strong. And I think a good tactical response would have been to tell Edwards and Mumba, okay, well, let's counter their expectations. Let's go out wide occasionally, get a bit of chalk on your boots, and stretch them back out, stop them impacting, compacting the play in the middle where they're so good. We didn't do any of that, and the amount of times Edwards and Mumba were caught coming inside and caught completely out of position was scary. The amount that went down the wide areas. Because even though the only one I will say in slight mitigation, to get out of full rant mode for a second, is I do think 5-0 flattered them a little bit. Not to say that we were good, but to say that they, as much as they were good, they weren't 5-0 levels of good, because I do think, like I say, Grimshaw should have kept probably at least 2 of them out. And yes, as much as they had a great chance late on, there were also a lot of what were not very good chances that went in the net just because either we defended them badly or the shot stopping was poor. And as much as I did have a moan at Grimshaw for the second, just the lack of defending for the second, as well as Finn pointed out, was dreadful. So really nothing positive at all about that, apart from the first 15 minutes. That's the only slight positive you can take out of it, where we actually played pretty well and created one of the clearest cut chances, if not the clearest cut chance we've had all season. But it's a shame we couldn't put it in the net. I want to just say a little bit, because this isn't really in the running order, so I don't think it's going to jump ahead of any questions that Ben might have, and apologies if it does. It's a real sort of psychological collapse and discipline. I know there is a question coming about the away form, so I'll maybe save the extended version of this rant for that question. But that the psychological aspect of collapsing in the face of adversity is really worrying indeed, because it's so different to how we are at home park. But I'm probably intruding too far into that question, so I'll hold that thought for now and say a bit more later on.
Good man. Yes, we will get to that. Don't you worry, because it's the elephant in the room. In fact, it's more than the elephant in the room. It's the topic on everyone's lips, I think, after that performance. So, Adam, give us a little summary, and if you can, sort of, is that a performance we should be alarmed by? I'd like to ask. After recent performance, Richard makes the point, and he said this earlier, that against QPR we went down to 10 men early again, away, and then 9. But we scrapped like demons to earn a point. Well, where was that spirit yesterday? Don't tell me Cardiff are massively better than QPR, because I'm not having it. And then Stevie says, Stevie Vaughan, far too open. We need to look at our tactics away from home. We're getting far overrun in midfield. A 4-5-1 or 4-4-1-1 formation going forward is what he would like to see. Is there anything there to, in those points, there's something that should ring alarm bells? Or having seen Wayne Rooney dig us out of perhaps an even worse performance on the first day of the season and turn things around, should we be optimistic that this is just another of these early tenure blips, and there's a good chance that this is soon forgotten? What's your take?
Yeah, it probably says a lot that this was our second worst performance of the season. We've still lost 5-0. Yeah, we played appallingly yesterday. It was one of the worst performances in the Championship of certainly the last month or so. Sheffield Wednesday was one of the worst. We've come back from worse before. Am I alarmed by it? I mean, yeah, it's hard not to be alarmed when you go to the bottom of the league and lose 5-0. Do I think it needs to define where we're going? Not necessarily, because as we say, we've come back from worse. But that's not to say that there's any crowning glories we can take from yesterday, or anything that should leave room for optimism on that performance alone. I agree with it wasn't what I was going to start on, but yeah, I agree with the comment on screen about Obafemi's first touch being pretty appalling. So yeah, for me, the midfield was horrendous. It was Randall against Colwell was a complete mismatch. I think JB had his worst game in a long time, with the way that he was, particularly defensively, and Al-Haj, for a lot of that, was a passenger, and that, for me, was the cause of a lot of the problem. I guess it goes back to the comment earlier on, Ben, that you flashed up about the midfield being overrun, particularly in away games, and that you're not going to get a more obvious example than what we saw yesterday. Now, does it alarm me hugely? I mean, I don't want to overreact. I know that if I overreacted here, it wouldn't be the first time I've overreacted. So, it wouldn't be out of character. But I look at it, and the players I've just listed off there about Randall, JB, and Al-Haj all having pretty terrible games. That's I think we'd all say fairly that that is not always the case. No, Randall in that deeper role has had more good games than bad. JB had really been coming into his own for a few weeks before the international break. He's got an international goal before he dropped that performance. And Al-Haj has got a lot of credit in the bank for that performance against Luton on his full debut and has generally looked impressive. So that's not to say that those three players in particular can't come back from that. It's just to say that yesterday, I think they'd all front up and say that they were pretty poor, and we'd all agree. Yeah, does that mean that we need to change the shape, or at least have a conversation about changing the shape? Possibly away from home, yeah. It's a shape that served us brilliantly at home. It's important to note. And when you're doing different formations at home and away, and I know we're going to have a bit more of a conversation later on about exactly what we need to do to nail down this away form. Does it, make it a bit more disjointed? Are we killing our home performances for the benefit of our away performances if we're not giving this formation a chance to shine all the time? I don't know, possibly, but it's something to look at. It's something that we have to consider, because it's not the first time, and to be honest, the way things go won't be the last time that we're seriously outplayed away from home. As you can add to this one, obviously the Sheffield Wednesday one, a few from seasons gone by. We've shipped 5 at Charlton, we've shipped 5 at Grimsby. It's a weird trend that we seem to have, and it's something needs to be done about our away form. Does yesterday's result in isolation worry me? Of course it does. Does it worry me in the grand scheme of things? Well, I look at those games that I've just listed off about Charlton and Grimsby and Sheffield Wednesday. We've come back from those every time, and a couple of those came in the season where we won promotion with 101 points. So it's hard to really criticise and say we need to rip it up and start again. But I think it's a conversation that at least needs to be had around the training ground, and to consider exactly what we need to do, because you can't be getting outplayed away from home as often as we do and expect it to be sustainable. You just can't do that. Something's going to give one way or another. And when we fixed our away form, it was under Ian Foster, and we completely killed what was happening at home. So it's really difficult to get right. But something's got to happen in these away games, because you can't have over 3,000 people travelling in expectation, lending some brilliant support, and be served that up and expect it to just be completely fine. So something's got to be done. But as I say, I realise I'm passing from one point to the other here and saying, don't change things, rip it all up and start again, don't rip it all up and start again. Something's got to be done about our away form, but I'm not looking at all of it and saying things have got to be done here, as I was after Sheffield Wednesday, because we know how this shape can work. So that was a bit of a ramble. Do something, don't do other things, but have a serious conversation in training about what exactly we can do to make things better.
Yeah, I think you're right. And every question that I think Rooney's been asked, or certainly that I personally have sort of posited, he's answered. So after Wednesday, it was like the players clearly don't know what you're trying to get him to do. Can he get his ideas across? Well, he did that very well. The formation wasn't working. Will he be flexible? Will he have finally learned to be flexible in his formation and his tactics? Well, he did, didn't he? He sort of changed the system now that's working. So whereas after Wednesday, I said I'm not sure if he will or he can get his ideas across. At least in this scenario, personally, I think that we should have some hope that Rooney's already demonstrated some flexibility and some pragmatism in his approach. So I think that we can be hopeful, if not confident, that there'll be maybe some more adaptation, so that our away form might get addressed. But we'll come on to that in a minute. Just before we do come on to the away form, because it really needs discussing, I think, and I think we've all been putting off discussing it for a long time. Wednesday brought it to a head, and I think today's definitely the day to get to it. I'll throw this open to everybody. If everyone wants a quick comment on it. This was supposed to be the start of an easy-ish run with Leeds away in the middle of it. We had Cardiff, we got Millwall at their place, we've got Preston at home, then Portsmouth at home, and then someone away, Derby away. It's supposed to be an easy
Leeds away before Derby as well.
Yeah, Leeds is in the middle of that run. I think the Leeds is before Portsmouth, actually.
Yeah.
No. But other than Leeds in the middle of that run, this is supposed to be 6 games where, there was some very winnable games. And I say, easy in inverted commas, because this season's championship, everyone seems to be able and actually doing it in terms of beating everybody else. But does this result give us a bit of a reality check for what we might be getting out of this easy run? And is there a worry that if we might get slightly left behind, pick up something that seems us look good, but then go into a rough run of getting fixtures after that and struggle? Or we think it can just be written off as an aberration and likely we'll carry on as we were? Is the truth sort of Luton at home, or is the truth Cardiff away, or is it somewhere in the middle?
The truth is both and a lot in the middle, because I think we are, and you know what, this ties into your question about the away teams and maybe the away forms, and maybe we can just, to an extent, discuss it as one overall issue, because we are a Jekyll and Hyde team. It is absolutely extraordinary how different we are at home to how we are away. To come back on Adam's answer to the previous question about the formation isn't working as well for at home as what it is for away, I don't disagree with that. But I think it's important to kind of look at what we actually can see observably happening. If it was the case that away from home, we were, like when Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham team somehow will just throw themselves forward and really try and dominate games and just get hit in behind on the counter time after time after time. If we were seeing that happen, then I'd kind of get that it's not a bug, it's a feature, it's just a system working how it should do. But we're not seeing that. We're not seeing us performing to the same level and other teams being more able to counter it. That's West Brom maybe is the one example where it was a bit like that. But in the game against Sheffield Wednesday, the game against Burnley, and the game yesterday, obviously against Cardiff, what we're seeing is us just not performing to the same level at all. And I don't think it's because teams are suddenly raising their game to the 1000th degree more on their own turf than they do at home park. Maybe there's an aspect of that, but I think what we're also largely seeing is a total lack of self-belief away. And I wonder if the kind of mythos and mythology around home park, the great place it is, cheering the lads on, we can beat anyone at home park. I wonder if that sort of mythology that we've created has a counter effect of away from that sort of comfort blanket environment. Psychologically, we're a wreck, because the way we respond in the face of adversity at home park as opposed to away from home park is wildly different. Like Sunderland, we went behind early, conceded a late equaliser, and then went up the other end and got a late winner. Blackburn, we conceded a late equaliser. I never was really in any doubt that we were going to go up the other end and find a winner. And I say I wasn't in any doubt, but I felt there was every chance that we could do, because of that's how good we were at home, and we did do. And even Luton, when they pulled one back and they were really knocking on the door, we just went up the other end and increased our 2-goal margin. We have had adversity in home games. We have had times where our system has been found out in home games. The difference is in home games is we then find another gear. In away games, it's as soon as somebody tests us, as soon as somebody presses us, the heads start dropping, panic starts to kick in. I was watching the game with my dad, who's a patron, as you can see, in a regular watch of this podcast yesterday. And we were both saying how good the first 15 were. And literally 5 minutes after, I just turned to him and said, no, this is no good. Heads have gone. And they had. And I know it's easy for football fans to always jump to talking about psychology and mentality when tactical issues also play a huge part. And maybe I'm being a bit guilty of that. But it is also important to remember the other way, that it isn't just all, robotic tactical issues. Mentality and spirit and do play a very big part as well. And whilst I do think there is a legitimate tactical argument, yes, Cardiff did respond well tactically. They overcrowded the middle of the pitch and we didn't respond to it. So you can look at it from that tactical viewpoint. I also think you're looking at differently in home games where tactics do, where tactical innovations are made against us and the game is pegged back. We just find another level and push it back again. And we don't have a tenth of that self-belief away than what we do at home. When something goes wrong away, our heads just drop and slopey shoulders kick in and nobody wants to be the player to step up and take responsibility. And that, to me, is a big, big concern. Comment has just popped up on the screen from Marcus saying Cooper said in an interview with Sheffield United the other day how difficult it was travelling away with Argyle. If you go in with that mindset, it's a struggle before you start. And yeah, if somebody who was very recently a long-standing player for us, obviously I've not seen the quotes, I don't know the full context, but if somebody who was a very long-standing player for us has come in and said about how that seemingly is the mindset around the dressing room, and I think that backs up what I'm saying to a very large extent. So circling back to whether this run, seemingly easier run, could be a bit of a missed opportunity, I think it puts huge pressure on those games against Preston at home and Portsmouth at home, who are two teams sort of in the bottom half of the league, because I just do not have any faith in us to win away from home, I'm afraid. I just don't. We have been in the obviously 23 league games last season, 5 away league games this season, and 2 cup games at Watford and Leeds. We have played championship opponents away from home 30 times since our promotion back to the championship. We have won 3 of them.
10%.
That's a 10% win ratio away from home since getting promoted to the championship. It's absolutely shocking. And out of those games against Millwall, Leeds and Derby, I cannot see us getting more than like maybe 1 draw from those 3 games. Maybe not even that. Maybe we'll lose all 3. We have obviously, not only have we not won since that Rotherham game with Gene Snippers the caretaker, we've only had 1 draw since that game.
And I don't think you can put Rotherham as Rotherham were literally the worst championship side by points total in a long time.
I mean, look, we did play well that night, and it was a good, well-deserved win, and Ben Waine really should have made it 2 at the end. But so, we did play well that night. But since then, 8 away games since then, 1 draw, 1 goal, in fact, which was Whittaker's 1 goal at QPR. So 7 out of our last 8 away games, we've blanked. And that, to me, just says what I'm talking about. We are a Jekyll and Hyde team, where we're Dr. Jekyll at home and we're Mr. Hyde away, whichever way around it is, whichever's the good one. I'm not entirely familiar with the literature, but we are a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde team, and that is deeply, deeply concerning. And whether it needs a psychological coach or whatever, I don't know, but it puts a lot of pressure on Preston and on Pompey, because I can't see us getting a lot for Millwall, Leeds or Derby. Really can't whatsoever, unfortunately. And yeah, it's a bit of a man, and I do think that the psychological side needs badly looking at, and that's my sort of closing word on the matter.
I just like to very quickly
circle back. That's why you're the people's choice. That was a wonderful cyclical argument. Enjoyed that.
You know what? It doesn't help. Sorry to go off again. It doesn't help that I have literally been to every single one of those 30 games, and every time I always have a fantastic day going up with my mates. Have a fantastic day, in the pub before, and normally, despite the bad results, I tend to have some fun going back most of the time. But it's always the football that seems to put a bit of a dampener on the day. So maybe I'm just, embittered and jaded and a miserable git being a regular away fan, never seeing us win. But it's just so painful to see this away form the way it is, and something's got to be done about it.
I would like to just talk about the football side of it, because I admittedly don't go to as many away games as Sam, and I think as a team, I don't necessarily look at that. I mean, it's easy in after to say this yesterday, but I don't necessarily look at this for us as an easy run, because I look at us increasingly and I think we are a team that thrives against teams who are actually better because they are more open and they come at us. And we are not a team which are particularly well organised. And if there aren't gaps for us to exploit, we kind of try and overpass. I mean, Cardiff. As soon as Cardiff pressed us yesterday, we went into our shell. So I feel like we are much more a vibes team, if you like I said earlier. And you put us. I don't think we're a team that likes to scrap, and I think that goes beyond Rooney, that goes beyond Schumacher, and Foster actually. What Foster got us to do is he got us to be. I'll give in Foster credit, what our teams were under him were fairly well organised teams. We just put everything on organisation, and then
It was too rigid, unfortunately. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it became too rigid. It was like almost over organised.
Yeah.
At least there was structure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we put everything on organisation and being a well organised team. But then when we went 1-0 down, we had no answer to it because that was our only plan. And in
Whereas now
Schumacher,
we're all vibes and no structure.
yeah, essentially.
Yeah. I'm going to say something, Adam. You can back this back to me or not, or you can take it and run with it or not. But to me, I'm sure the psychology is a part of it. But we seem disproportionately good at home, and we seem disproportionately bad away. And the thing that's common in both of those is the amount of travel that has to be done. Teams coming to us and us going away. Because yes, I sort of think to pin everything on psychology, I certainly think that's a part of it. And I think that what I'm going to come to also plays into the psychology. But there would be other teams having awful runs if it was, this would be a pretty unique psychological flaw through several managers with several different leadership teams in the dressing room, etc., for this to be, the main cause. Is it possible that there's something about the way the club, and it might not be fixable, the club is limited by its resources, etc., etc., but do you think perhaps something in the distances that have to be travelled and the way that's travelled that perhaps has an impact on the way the players can perform away? And then, going back to that Michael Cooper comment about the lads, it's a slog going away. Therefore, does that have an impact on the psychology, which then snowballs with that travel issue? We saw the images for the Watford game where everyone was, Jordan Houghton and others stood on the train. I know we sort of laugh about that. It doesn't happen on a regular, but is there something there that maybe has the same way that people, they can fly down to Exeter, but they've still got to get the coach down, and it's a long old slog for everyone coming, that it affects them the same way reciprocally? That to me seems to sort of line up more with the facts of the matter. Or do you feel there's something else? Do you think it's the psychology? Do you think it's a mix of the two? Do you think there's things that are just we're not privy to going on?
Well, one thing I would say is I don't particularly have much sympathy with Michael Keeper in that comment, and that's not because he's not a Plymouth Argyle player anymore. It's just because if you pay for Plymouth Argyle, you're going to have to travel. So if you don't feel like you can do it, don't do it. I know it's a very easy thing to say.
He didn't do it, Finn. He left.
Oh yeah, quite. Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's like, so we're basically saying, what he's basically saying there is like, it's difficult. So we're never going to be in the best shape to play away from home, which then, as a player, you're limiting how well your team can do over long periods of time. And I think they've got to look. They have to, because it's upon multiple managers now. The players probably have to look within themselves if that's how the way that they feel, but also get someone to help them with that. Because I'm not being funny. I'm sounding a bit like Roy Keane here, but it is part of their job. And especially if you pay for Plymouth Argyle, you have to accept that is going to be the case. Otherwise, should we just send the youth team to away games and play, at home? Is there any point us putting any effort into that if that's genuinely the way that some players feel? It's like you have to somebody there, whether it's Joe Edwards, whether it's a psychologist that comes in or whatever, somebody there has to step up and take responsibility. I'm not expecting us to go away and win loads of games, because we're Plymouth Argyle in this championship. We've got to be realistic about where we are, what size of club we are, and the fact that we've just been promoted back to it. However, we can't play this badly away from home all the time. And yeah, we didn't do it against West Brom, and we didn't play this bad against Burnley. So you got that, but we've got to find ways of being able to dig in away from home. And sometimes that goes beyond system. So yeah, I do think it's more of a psychological issue. But like I said, I don't really have much sympathy with that comment, because it's like, unfortunately, that I'm sure it would be hard for us if we were players and we had to travel up and do it. But you play for Plymouth Argyle, so you have to do that, and everybody in history's had to do that. And in fact, we've had plenty of teams that are good away from home.
Yeah, we had like the Derek Adams. We were better away than we were at home for a lot of it, which was just kind of feels remarkable. And I don't think we were ever like that. But
So
anyway,
what I'm saying is, I don't think that's much of an excuse.
I would agree. It may be a reality, but it's not a good reason for it to be a reality. And the other thing I would say is I think it's probably not a coincidence that the 3 red cards we've had, player-wise, I know that Rooney, as the coach, was at home. The 3 red cards we had have all been away from home. And I just think that all plays into it. Like I say, it's discipline, malaise, psychological sort of disgruntledness, frustration, all ties into it. Because Sissoko yesterday, and I know, we don't want to turn this all too much into slagging off one player, but he will not be proud of himself this morning. He will not be proud of himself at all, the way he responded. We all know that Perry and Gene's a little, so-and-so, and he was exactly the same when he played for Crewe. He would be the one to dig someone in the ribs off the ball or give them a little kick when they're on the ground. He's a nasty player, always is, always has been, and I don't believe for 1 minute that it was anything other than intentional that he booted the ball to Sissoko. He was 100% trying to get a reaction, but don't give him the reaction he was looking for. We'd already got the free kick. We'd already, if you're going to stand up and just give him a little bit of verbals, that's one thing. Even if you want to give him a little, shoving the kind of stomach, that would be another thing. But when you put your hand up to someone's neck, that's it. You're gone. You're absolutely gone when you do that. And even if you sort of give him a little nudge and got a yellow, yes, that's not ideal, but at least that's a little bit of constraint. When your hand goes above the throat, that's it. It's game over. You're sent off. And unfortunately, quite rightly so. And there's got to be a tie-in, I think, with that level of head loss from him as an individual and from the collective head loss we saw from the team yesterday. And
they were just shrugging. They were like this after the second goal. They were literally shrugging at each other. They were like, well, from Joe Edwards to Morgan Whittaker, they were all looking at each other. It's like, what's going on? So
Edwards really was not happy with Whittaker many times, and as much as I have stuck up for Whittaker compared to the narrative that's developed about him on this podcast, and on a broader level, I stand by that. He was abysmal yesterday, really abysmal yesterday. The amount of passes that were just absolutely to nobody, and I know it doesn't help when people aren't moving in front of him, but the amount of passes that were just basic ones weren't got right. And as much as I do think he has tracked back on a lot of occasions, he was not tracking back well enough yesterday, and it was a poor game from him.
Sorry, the other one is Sissoko for the first goal. That being kind, that is a half-hearted attempt at trying to close down the ball. I think whatever went on yesterday, I'm not putting it down to a lack of effort because I hate doing that, but it certainly looks like a psychological problem yesterday. Like people just weren't in the frame of mind, across the team. I mean, Obafemi, that chance when we were playing one in the first, that should be a goal. And I know, Ryan Hardy has missed a lot of chances one-on-one over the years that he feels he should have got, one away to Barnsley in particular that sticks in my mind. But I think actually maybe at home, Obafemi does score that. I genuinely think that he's got to that point now where it's that level of problem psychologically that we do let things, for whatever reason, get in our heads like that.
Adam, you're a very handsome ornament in the bottom corner, but you've not been able to get a word in edgeways for about 15 minutes. Did you want to have a say on our away form, possible causes, possible remedies, or are you have you zoned out as much as I have listening to these?
No, I mean it probably helps that I've agreed with a lot of what's being said, so haven't needed to jump in and argue. I think it's obvious that there is a psychological element there, and I think it's obvious that there is a travel element there. I think they'd perhaps explain some small differences in what we see from a home and away from. I don't think they go far enough to explain the gaping chasm that we've seen, and it's possibly just the nature of where we are in this league that is causing a significant issue. I had a quick look earlier at last season and saw that across that time, we've got 69% of our points at home. That only Birmingham and Rotherham won more points at home, and they were both relegated. It could well be that teams at this level need to have a significant home form in order to survive, and those that don't do very well away from home end up dropping off. One thing I will say is, if you take out the Ian Foster era, which I think we'd all love to do, that ultimately he won. I think it was 8 points, maybe 7 away and 4 at home. You take that out, it's 79 points that we've won at home. It's clearly.
He actually won 9 away, Adam, because it was the 2 wins, and then it was 8, because it was a draw at Huddersfield and a draw at Blackburn. Sorry, you are right.
That's okay though. I'm glad to have that confirmed by someone who knows. So that's great.
It's making me laugh. I can't take it, Adam.
Sorry, yeah.
I don't know. It's but either way, it shows that. I mean, that's laid bare. The statistical evidence. It's tougher to say than I'd like to hope. Was there in the sense that the 3 teams that won a bigger proportion, or the biggest proportion of points at home last season, were the 3 teams that finished from 21st and below. So it goes a long way, and I don't necessarily buy that it's always been an issue. We've had some shockers over the years. Don't get me wrong; that's always been the case. I think that every now and then we just do not show up at all, as was the case yesterday, as was the case a few times. But in that promotion-winning season, the 101.1, where we were absolutely electric at home, that still accounted for only 60% of our total points that season. Whereas as we got to the Championship, that issue's got worse and worse. It's something about this level, and it's something about the way that we travel. And I agree that I think the long travel is an element, as I agree that I think the long travel down at home makes us a little better in front of our own fans. There's clearly more than that, and there's clearly some sort of psychological basis on this thing, and particularly since we've got to this level, it almost feels like the travel may tire us out a little bit, and there's almost a sense that since we've got to the Championship, there's a few players who kind of, maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome, maybe it's a case of thinking we're a League One team battling here, we kind of don't belong at this level, and anything we get here is a bonus, when of course we do belong at this level. We've earned the right to be at this level, and we need to play like we deserve to be at this level. I kind of feel like there's a situation where as the players kind of feel too sorry for themselves very quickly, going 1-0 down away from home and go, oh, well, it's us away in the Championship. We're always likely to get beat, never mind. It's just going to be one of those days. Whereas at home, we don't have that, because we've got it in our psyche and in the players' minds that we can beat anybody at home, and so it's proved. So I think, as I say, I don't disagree with what anybody has said so far, which is kind of is nice. But I kind of feel like it's a combination of all those factors. I think when you add the travel to the psychology, add that into the fact that we are in a situation where I do feel like we're feeling sorry for ourselves away from home. We're not necessarily getting too concerned when we fall behind, and it can lead to some shockers. Put that all into the melting pot, and you get records like ours, where we can be fantastic and we can be dreadful. It just so happens that our fantastic games are at home, and our terrible games are the ones away from home. And I think everything plays a role. I think you're right, Ben, in the sense that the fact that we're so far away contributes to that. But if that was the case, you'd see similar with teams like Sunderland. You'd see similar with teams like Exeter, where they always perform at home and don't perform away from it. It's not really the case that we see that. I think it's a factor unique to us, because obviously we're further away from many teams than Sunderland and even Exeter are. But I think there's definitely a psychological element there. It's an unavoidable psychological element. I think it is probably based in that fact of, since we've been in the Championship, there's a few too many who feel like we're going away from home, anything we get is a bonus. There's not enough. We're going away from home and we should win this game. And when that does happen, we see performances like we did at Rotherham, where we went there feeling like we should win the game because Rotherham are terrible, and we did win the game, and we should have won it by more than we did. Sorry, go on.
Well, I would say that I think we should feel like we should go away to Cardiff. I mean, they're bottom of the league.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah, we're on the same page there for sure. I think that as soon as we went 1-0 down yesterday, there was kind of a feeling of, oh yeah, this is a championship away game. Oh well, we're going to kind of fall apart now. Whereas for the first 15 minutes when we were in the game, I think we played some genuine stuff, and it's kind of like, yeah, this is the sort of performance we should put in. So yeah, I think the reason I was that lovely looking or otherwise ornament for a little while is because I've looked at all those points and go, yeah, you're right. There's a travel factor, there's a psychology factor, and I think there's a little bit of imposter syndrome factor through a few of our players as well. How do you fix that? Well, spend a bit more money on travel, perhaps, so you're not standing up on a train would be a start. But I think maybe I look at it and go, this is ripe territory for a sports psychologist to come in and offer what they can in a similar way than actually we're ripe territory for a set piece coach to come out. I know it's a completely separate issue, but I think those are two positions that if we brought another body in to fill, we'd look a lot better in a lot of the elements of what we do. And away travel is, I think we'd all say, number one on the list of what needs to improve.
Yeah, because it's getting a little bit beyond a joke. I know the Green Army love to be known for their loyalty and the many miles they travel. It's almost like a badge of honor, the suffering that they go through, but it's getting a little bit beyond a joke now, isn't it, for many. We're just gonna have a little bit of an aside for a moment. I don't know if some of you remember, if you have listened to the pod recently. A couple of months ago, it was announced that the PAs, the personal assistants for disabled customers of the club's miles away travel would need to start paying for their tickets, or their disabled employers would, rather than being able to travel free with the club. It's something that Finn and I talked about on the pod, and we've also dealt with separately. Finn, along with Joe, another Argyle fan, a disabled Argyle fan who uses miles away, has done for years. He's a wheelchair user. They sort of spearheaded it, Finn and Joe, but there's been a group of fans who've been a bit disturbed about the decision and the way it was handled. And although this isn't led by the pod, the lads have kindly allowed us to sort of have the floor for a little bit, because after sort of liaising with the club for a little bit with PADSA, the PADSA, the Plymouth Argyle Disabled Supporters Association, and not really getting much of a good answer. I think, Finn, you published an open letter, didn't you? It's not on the Green and White Argyle Life Substack. It wasn't a pod thing, but you published it on Substack, and I'm sure if people want to find your Twitter, there's a retweet of it there. And Mr. Parkinson was kind enough to reply to the letter, but basically said that the business was closed. There was going to be no more discourse on the matter, and you weren't best impressed. I know I wasn't either with the response that you got. You asked and received permission to be able to quote that response. So like I say, the guys have kindly allowed us to sort of just address that just for a few moments. Finn, do you want to jump in and take away what you want to say?
Sure. I'd just like to say I'll go. I'll kind of break down the letter briefly, paragraph by paragraph, because there are a lot of things which concern me throughout. I understand that this is the club's position, and although I don't agree with the outcome, they are far well within their right to make a decision which they feel is adequate. I just don't believe that it is, and I'm going to explain why I don't think it is. So I got, as I said, I thank Mr. Parkinson for his response. In the first, sorry, I would just like to say, I'd just like to start from the bottom, where he says that he believes that this matter about the cost of PAs on coaches are now closed as they look forward to the rest of the season, which obviously gives us no avenue to go down and liaise with the club anymore on this. So they've shut down any ability for us to kind of challenge their position. Going to the start of the the letter, where in my initial letter I made the comment that I believe throughout this process and liaising with them that they have been obscure and disingenuous, and they say that is not true. Well, I'd like to rebuff that and say that actually, I believe that they have been, and mainly because through every stage, no matter who I've talked to, whether it be the club's support liaison officer, Andrew Parkinson himself, or Padsa, who have been very, very helpful in this process, actually, and I will go on to that. And I don't blame the Disabled Supporters Association explicitly, but everyone has made the clear comment that when they have been questioned about it in the first instance, that nobody has had an idea of this before they have been told. Well, somebody had to have an idea because somebody made the decision to change it, and now they are so very happy to implement a charge that they think that implementing a charge is fair. And I have an issue with this because I feel like actually if somebody in the club has made the decision to change, I'm not going to say who that is because I don't have evidence of that, but somebody has made that decision, then why are they so quick to always say, I didn't know anything about it? Well, to me, that almost suggests that they feel like maybe what they're doing is unethical. There would be no other explanation for why somebody hasn't owned up and said, actually, this is me who's made the decision, and these are the reasons why I think. It's only when pressed have they answered this decision and the reasons for it. And they also said in the letter that a public statement on the fact that they have now made it half price is not justified because of the number of people that it affects. Well, this doesn't add up to me because I believe that it was, first of all, announced publicly, yes, buried in a letter about the travel prices for Sheffield Wednesday away, the first game of the season. It was announced publicly and then also challenged by one of the club supporters at the Fans Forum, which is the most public event that the club could have answered that they were looking into an investigation on this. So if you've put it out as a public announcement, how does it make sense that you then, when it suits, only say that you've communicated with the people that it affects? Because I will tell you now, there are people that have replied to me on Twitter and replied to me on, obviously you can't assume all the time, but I would say the majority of people that have replied to me on Twitter are in fact not disabled. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect them or doesn't affect people that they know, but I feel like there is enough query on this from fans of all abilities that it should be mentioned publicly, and people deserve to know the answer. So I don't believe that that point stands up for those reasons. I also would like to go to a bit in the letter where Andrew Parkinson states that Padsa indeed were made aware of this charge and they supported it. Now, I find this strange because when I went to Padsa, they said they had no initial idea of it and had only been made aware of it once they had started getting queries about this decision from other supporters, and then they were given a a letter which they were asked to disseminate to supporters, explaining why they had made this decision. So Andrew Parkinson is essentially saying that PADSA have been not wholly truthful in what they're saying, and I find this quite insulting, because indeed we mentioned PADSA. I went to PADSA before I released this letter publicly on Substack and said, would you be supportive of this letter? They then canvassed the supporters that are part of the Plymouth Argyle Disabled Supporters Association, and they said that they were happy for this letter to be put out. So this truth does not add up to me, and that makes me really, really cross, because I believe that whilst I respect that, again, this is the club's decision, I don't respect the outcome, but I respect that they've got the choice to make the choice that they want to make. I don't believe that they have. There has been, throughout this process, there has been an entire lack of recognition and empathy from all parties involved, bar PADSA, because obviously they know, as disabled supporters, the guy that runs it, as a disabled supporter himself, and as people who work with other disabled supporters, he's well aware of the challenges to get to away games, and already the increasing costs that disabled people have to deal with, on top of the cost of living crisis that everybody already lives in, to live their daily life as they should. So that point in particular makes me very, very cross. They also say that it is not misleading to say that the cost that they have implemented is necessary for the prices of the miles away travel club to stay the same, and but they don't actually give any financial reason for that, and only point to the cost of living crisis. Now, that is a very, very like undetailed way of putting it, because if we're talking about the fairness of this, yes, it's not ideal. If you have to put the prices up, that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a good thing. But the reason why this has annoyed me so much is because it's the fact that it has hit a targeted group of supporters who are already having to generally pay more to live their life and do the activities that they want to do. Hence why things like the PIP payment exists for those kinds of supporters. So I would prefer in that case some more financial justification. They're not, they're within their rights to withhold that information from us. They can do that, but I just feel like it really doesn't add to the strength of their already, in my opinion, weak argument if they just, all that they can point to is the cost of living crisis, especially when they think that what they are doing is, they say in their letter, it's incredible value for money, and that it's a fair and generous offer. Now, what's fair and generous about charging somebody for essentially what is their equipment to access that game in the way that they want to, so that they can enjoy it? what is fair and generous about that. I find that language to be patronising personally and pretty cold-hearted, and for a club which centre a lot of their values around community support and values, I find it to be massively hypocritical. Now, this isn't me saying that the Project 35, for example, that the sponsors at the back of the shirt is a bad initiative. I believe that it's a great initiative and that the club is doing absolutely the right thing in supporting that and openly. But it just doesn't sit right with me when the club it can do what in one area and then be so uncommunicative and hard to get an answer out of, a sophisticated answer out of, when you express concerns about how this affects certain members of the club's community. And it's made me personally feel very unwelcome, really. The club in general, I'm still very, very supportive of the team and very, very supportive of Wayne Rooney, because they have nothing to do with this. So Plymouth Argyle, the team, is still my club, and I'm a supporter of coming up 15 years and have had a season ticket every season since I've been at the club. I just feel really, really disappointed, and I think that made me feel like I don't matter, and other disabled supporters will give you their own point of view. But I think that it's led me to the point where unfortunately I have to step away from this podcast for the time being, because whilst I, as a fan, wish the club every success on the field, I believe it would be wrong for me to not suggest that we are a media outlet which can influence the way that people perceive the club. And for me to then say, well, isn't this club amazing, when all of these things are going on in the background, is something I can't do. And I'd like to make that clear, that it's not anything to do with the contributors on this podcast or anyone. I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity that they've given me over the years. It's just an unfortunate consequence of what the investigation that I've done over the last 2 months. And I'm sorry, it's just not. I feel let down by the club. That's the most the way that I can put it to sum it up. It's like someone you've been friends with for a number of years, and then they go behind you and stab you in the back. That's what it feels like. And if that was the case and it was your friend, then you probably wouldn't speak to them for a long time and wouldn't say, oh, isn't this guy great? So that's how I feel I have to approach this. I have to step down from club orientated podcasts for a while. And I hope that the club in future make better decisions when it comes to how it deals with different situations which affect certain parts of its community.
Thank you, Finn. I know that the rest of the pod, the lads, are sad that you won't be involved, but completely respect and understand those personal feelings. And I know I too share them. I got involved with you guys in the latter part of your research, and I too feel the same way about the decision. Like, people are being charged 150% to be able to access a service, and that just doesn't feel equitable. And there doesn't seem to be any financial justification for it. If you've got 130 people going on 3 coaches paying £50 a pop, that's £6,500 that's being paid for that trip. If you've got 3, and that's not 3 full coaches, that's just that's 2.5 coaches full of people. That's £6,500 that's being paid. Are you telling me that 5 PAs paying £20 each, so an extra £100, is going to make that financially viable? That's the only solution. Like, the £6,500, sorry, it's not financially viable. We have to pay an extra. We have to charge the PAs the extra £100. Well, that makes it financially viable. There's absolutely no credence to the idea that this is a finance determined decision. And it's it's not for me necessarily even about like rights and things, but it's just the way it makes me feel personally. It feels like a really cruddy decision by the club that affects a specific badly represented and badly supported part of their community. And in the letter that Finn was quoting from earlier, Mr. Parkinson talks about, we didn't think it affected enough people to warrant a public response. And I kind of feel like that's indicative of that sort of language, indicative of how, recently at West Ham, they've taken away all subsidies, and there's been great uproar about that. There's no, under 21s, under 18s, OAPs, any of that. But that didn't just happen. They didn't just wake up one day and remove all. There's an incremental sort of introduction of these sort of things, and it starts with things like this, which don't seem to affect a lot of people, but most supporters go, and there's some comments and they'd be like, this is painful, it doesn't affect me, I don't care. And that's where these sort of changes can happen, and there seems to be quite a few of those at the club recently that don't sit right. It just makes me feel like you said, Finn, if that was a friend making that decision, I'd say that's a bit of a crummy decision. That's not sort of what I expect from you. And maybe it's because maybe it's injured my pride a little. I drank the Kool-Aid and bought into the the egalitarian kind of values that were being preached, and sort of thought, yeah, I like that. My club's different. If it hadn't sort of done that, maybe I wouldn't feel different. You just go, well, that's business. But because I sort of drunk the Kool-Aid, it then feels a bit, season ticket holders being asked to move so they can get some more padded seats in the Mayflower. Project 35, but it's going to cost you 250, 300 quid to be a mascot. Sort of gives this idea of, all are equal, but some are more equal than others, sort of thing. The 35% of the children in the city are struggling for food, but you're saying you can only be a mascot if you pay a significant chunk of money. Does that say that everyone's welcome and included at the club? You could argue, there's lots of ways you can argue a lot of different things, but as you suggested, Finn, it comes down to money. It's good value for money. Other clubs are doing this, we feel we can charge that, and not actually looking at the human element. And I kind of feel like this is sort of like the nail in the coffin for me a little bit, in terms of buying into those values that sort of get thrown around. So yeah, I've kind of lost some. I support the team or whatever, but I've kind of lost my enthusiasm a little bit. I'm going to row back what I do on here. I think I'm going to stick to the scouting reports and maybe a bit of this hosting. It's good fun. But yeah, likewise, I feel a little bit let down by the powers that be. But let's move on to something a little bit more positive, something that they have got right, and credit where it's due is some of the academy business that's been going on. Sam, I'll let you jump in on this because I know you might have something to add on the previous point. If you don't, feel free to just run with the academy stuff. But you had an interesting night, it seems, earlier in the week when you shipped 7 against Argyle's youth team. Sam Down was over Twitter. I think whoever was on the 1s and 2s for the Academy X account knows the weight of the name Sam Down in the Argyle Twitter world. It was getting a really good airing, and we respect that game.
Full name treatment quite a lot, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was getting the John Terry, Gareth Barry treatment very much, wasn't it? They knew what they were doing, and we respect that game a lot. We're big fans.
Yeah, just very quickly on the last one. I certainly don't want to take over it when Finn and Ben have worked so hard on it. But I want to first of all say, Finn, I'm really sorry to see you go. Completely understand, completely respect your reasons for it. goes without saying, if you do have a change of mind, at any point, even if it's not now, even if it's much later down the line, you're more than welcome back. But if you don't, I completely respect that as well, because I absolutely get your reasons for it. And I think that, whilst it's not something I've been actively involved in, it is something I'm supportive of, because I do think it is a shame that for a club that has done so much genuinely good stuff, for this.
And I would like to add, sorry, this doesn't take away from the good work that they've done in the past and continue to do in other areas.
Absolutely.
But it would be remiss of me not to bring this up and pretend that everything's fine.
Completely. And I think for that, it's obviously the decision itself and the way it's been handled. Yes, I'm sure they probably spoke to Pastor at some point, but probably after the decision had already been made. It wasn't a proper consultation, I don't think. So, I think the decision itself and the way it was done is not great at all. And I do hope that the club do, have a rethink on it. I don't think they will, but I hope the club, certainly don't go any further, at the very least, down this line of action, because it could just really end up pricing people out who already have a very tough time in life, and that's the last thing anyone wants to see. But well, look, Finn, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the pod over all these years. I know you'll still be at the Football Content Awards next month. Obviously, all the fantastic work you've done along with our other contributors, and I'm sure we'll still have a few glasses of whatever substance we choose to have. We'll still chat all the time, watching Argyle, whether you contribute to this pod or not. So that's my last word. Now, like I said, I didn't want to go too long on that, because you've covered it very well already. But on to the academy. It was the under-17s beat Exeter Academy 7-0 the other night. There was a player named Sam Down who was the goalkeeper for Exeter. Possibly a relation of mine, but Down is very much a West Country name. I know that my paternal grandfather was one of 7 males, so that was a lot of Downs who throughout that have gone across the southwest. It is very much a name far more prevalent, I think, in this part of the country than anywhere else. So who knows? Could be a distant second or third cousin. I really wouldn't have a clue. Going on to the actual game itself, obviously I didn't actually watch it, but Argyle were, well, I say obviously I might have watched it, but I didn't anyway. Argyle were fantastic by all accounts. Tegan Finn, who me and Aaron saw, unfortunately dislocate his arm or break his arm or whatever it was in Spain. That was his first game back from injury, and he was very good. And Seb Campbell, who I didn't really know much about, but also seems to be a really highly rated player. Only just 16, I think, or maybe not even that, scored 4 goals, which is extraordinary. And also a notable name, Leo McCormick in goal, the son of Luke McCormick, of course. And really good to see the academy doing so well after many years of Exeter's academy really having the better of ours. Good to see that our lads are coming out on top. So hopefully there'll be a lot of those that will be the next Cooper, Randall, Isaka, maybe, if Isaka continues to progress. Hopefully we'll add some more names to add to that, in maybe Finn, maybe Campbell, and whoever else maybe could be added to that list.
Yeah, Adam, if you don't mind, I might be throwing you in the deep end a little bit, but we've got the brick field shortly to come into operation, presumably, given the recruitment going on at the club, that there might be a reintroduction of reserve team games, etc. I know the formerly of this parish, the Argyle analyst, Nick, put out a list of the recent results of the academy sides against each other in the local derby, the Devon Expressway derby, and that Argyle finally coming out on top. There seems to be lots of reasons to be hopeful for the future in the sustainability of the club, and that deserves applause.
Yeah, it really does. I look at the board right now, and they've had, since the start of this year, a lot of criticism in a lot of areas. Now, some of that has been totally justified, and I wouldn't. It would be remiss of me not to mention, what you guys have just mentioned, Finn in particular, of the decision on PAs for travel, which to me seems an absolute disgrace, and the way they've handled it even worse. So I'm not going to spend too long talking about it. You guys know far more than I do, and how your voice does absolutely deserve to be heard more than mine on that issue. But I will just echo what Sam said. It's been a pleasure chatting to yourself in. And I say, I'm not going to say it's a lesser extent of been a pleasure chatting to you, but I'm saying to a lesser extent, because I know you're still going to be around for a few bits and pieces with hosting. But if either of you do have a change of heart, I think the podcast would absolutely welcome you back with open arms. But I completely appreciate if that doesn't happen, and the stance you've taken is certainly a fair and moral one from where I sit, and the boards do deserve plenty of criticism for the way they've handled it. Now, to move on to back to the academy again, one thing that the board has been hit by, which I've never really agreed with, is this issue of brickfields and the issue of why are we spending so much on brickfields when we could be spending it on the first team? We've had a lot of that, particularly in the Foster era where things weren't going well. It's like, well, why have you done that in the transfer window? Why are you spending so much on brickfields here? And actually, that's something that I've never really agreed with as a stick to hit the board with, because of how much it's going to impact us going forward in the future, and how we're already starting to see the green shoots of academy investment with that performance. Now, maybe we've oversold it a little bit, because I think only putting 7 goals past Sam Down is actually very disappointing from the way I see it. And, maybe a bit of shooting practice on Friday morning would have been in order. But
he's a fine specimen, but I don't know how he got away with claiming he was under 17.
No.
He wore a hat with that hairline.
Possibly.
You said it.
Had a shave as well.
Sam Down in goal for one and a McCormick in goal for the other one. I mean, how we're getting Sam and a 41-year-old in and not getting bowled up is, well, there's a lot of questions to answer. But in the main, I think we can be very pleased with where the academy sits, and Brickfield is only going to help with that. We look at what Exeter have achieved over the years with their academy. They were given a huge helping hand with our administration, and the fact that we kind of had to turn our back on the way the academy was run. The players that came through their academy in that time, Ollie Watkins, Matt Grimes, Ethan Ampadu, that's just a few. And the way that they've been able to sustain themselves on the back of that is probably 90% of the reason they actually find themselves as high up the pyramid as they do right now. So we want a piece of that action, quite frankly. And I think it's there's huge benefits to it from us being hopefully turning away into the undisputed best academy in this part of the world. Will give us some of those players coming through and give us first dibs on those. It will also, and I'm not going to pretend that the fact that this would also hurt Exeter City doesn't please me. It pleases me a lot that we are not only gaining some of that, we're also taking away a key element of what's kept them going over the years.
Good.
So,
Can I just? I'm glad to hear some anti-Exeter sentiment on this pod. There's far too much. Oh, I don't care. I don't mind Exeter on here. It's good to hear some proper good old media.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, I look at this. Of course, my number one of enjoying the way the academy is going is that it's benefiting Plymouth Argyle. But the fact that it's hurting Exeter City is a close second. Let me be clear.
We'll hopefully enjoy some poorer results than they've been getting recently, and they can go on their annual Exeter slide down the table.
Yeah. Well, they won the league this time last year.
So do Exeter.
Anyway. So yeah, I like we're all on a similar page with that one. I think that's one thing that has been thrown at the board that I've never quite agreed with. I think this Brickfields development is excellent. I'm really looking forward to opening. I'm hoping that we do have the reserve team coming in, and the noises with the potential scouts and coaches that we're getting for that as well. Sounds like it's all heading in that direction, and that is something that really does excite me. And I really do hope, as Sam said there, that the Adam Randalls and the Michael Coopers that we've had through the academy recently are just the start of it. And there's some names there that I think we can be really encouraged by. And hopefully we can still be sitting here in 5 years' time having these discussions and saying, that investment in the academy has really bore fruit, and it'll be the start of a great cycle that benefits us, hurts our local rivals, and I don't think you can say fairer than that.
Yeah, so, here. Last thing on the agenda then, Adam, we'll stick with you as you're our preview guru. And I'm absolutely certain that as professional as you are, even in your hobbies, you'll have already started looking at Millwall and their squad and all that analysis.
Far too well.
So we'll start with you then. The next game is another away game. Sam's already told us he doesn't think we're going to get much from it. We'll start with you. We'll go to Finn and then finish up with Sam. What do you think of this? What can we expect? Do you think? Obviously, don't spoil your your written word preview for Argyle Life, but what can we expect, and what are you hopeful for?
Yeah, so you're right, obviously, that I'm sad enough to have already done a bit of that research in preparation for that piece coming out later this week. What I will say, though, sitting here, is that I don't think anything that I'm going to say is going to necessarily surprise anyone in the way that Millwall set up. They are the long ball team of the Championship. Under Neil Harris, they are a physical presence, and that is how they'll try to both nullify Argyle and create the majority of their chances. And it's been working, to be fair to them. They've been creating a lot of chances this year from that method. They've been, really getting themselves in front of goal with that physicality and giving themselves the best possible opportunities. And I feel it's a weird quirk that, having said that they find themselves below Argyle in the lead. I think they've been very good for large periods and just losing out on the big moments. I looked at a couple of games at the start of the season that I started looking at. One, their very first game against Watford, they were by far the better side. They conceded a couple of long-range efforts and managed to get themselves back in the game. They were 2-0 down and got it to 2-2 right at the end, and then still managed to lose the game. They conceded a last-minute winner after doing all of that. Next time out against Bristol City was a very similar story. They went 2-0 down. This time they actually got themselves back into the lead in that game. They were going 2-0 down to 3-2 up very quickly in that second half and still lost the game. You seeing a pattern developing. They are the sort of team that I think are going to cause us loads of issues, particularly with their physicality. I think they'll create a lot of chances, but that doesn't make me certain that Millwall are going to win the game, because through a lot of the season they've been getting themselves into these positions and not converting. Again, another example is what we've just seen from Man yesterday against Derby. They had the better of that game. They should have won the game. They again were very physical and effective through that. They didn't win the game. They went 1-0 down late on and had to rely on a very late equaliser to ensure they didn't lose the game. So I think, in a strange way, I do fear their team in a lot of circumstances. I think they'll have the better of us in a lot of areas, and I think they will create chances. But there's something about Millwall this season that you usually see this as a team that has that dog in them, that they're able to grind out results. It's been the opposite way around this year. They've had the better of a lot of games. They've got themselves, as I say, in front of goal. The number of big chances has really been fantastic and testament to how this sort of style, even if it feels like it can be from a bygone age, can still work. But they sit below this Argyle side in the league, and it's something where we should be able to go there and have a bit of confidence. Say, okay, well, we may have to sacrifice a few bits, we may lose a few of these battles, but we can still absolutely get at them. Now, of course, you have to temper that by the fact that this is a Plymouth Argyle away game, Plymouth Argyle away from home. Even when we put in our good performances, tend to get beat. So I still do think, having said that a Millwall win is the most likely outcome. But we should absolutely go there and try and, if not assert ourselves on the game, still be in the mindset of, well, this is a team that have a bit of a soft underbelly to them, which you can very rarely say about Millwall. And even if things start looking like they're going to go awry, we should, and quote on should, because we rarely do this, but we should be able to go there and say, well, even if we're facing a bit of adversity, we can still get something from this game, because we know what Millwall have been like all season. Is that in reality how we're going to tackle it? Hey, probably not, based on what we've been saying for the last hour and a half. But that's what I expect to see. I expect to see Millwall have the better of the game. I don't necessarily think they'll blow us away like Cardiff or Sheffield Wednesday were able to. I think they probably will still win. But I feel like we can go there with a little bit of confidence and think that even if things start to look like they're going pear-shaped again, Millwall are the sort of side that could, for example, if they get ahead, blow that lead. So in
summary, we fall apart away. They seem to fall apart all the time this season. Whoever fails better has got a good chance of winning.
It's going to win the game. Yeah. I think
I can't say it better than that. Dr. Argyle will see you now.
Dr. Argyle will see you now. Finn, Sam, that was pretty comprehensive. Do you want anything to add on what you're expecting from the game? If not,
go on, Finn, you first.
So I'd just like to say that I think we're gonna have to see a better performance than Saturday. I mean, Rooney said we've got to move on quickly. This has got to be better. I think one thing I forgot to add earlier was that that's two performances now under Rooney where the players simply haven't. Well, he basically said, basically he basically said the players didn't do the basics well enough. So we've got to get to a point where we're consistently doing the basics. So I think, like, I hope that because of that, we're going to do better on Wednesday night. I think that we probably will still lose because it's the Den, and the Den is a hard place to go, and teams don't really like going there, and we're not good away from home. So, but I would like to think that it's a better performance and maybe something that we can we can feel a bit better about going forward, even if we do lose. Having said that, it is a game we should be targeting to win realistically. So I think we're going to lose 2-1.
Fair enough. Sam, did you have anything? You started.
Yeah, I just don't have any faith in us away at the minute. I think we will lose. I mean, there is an aspect of, yes, they're a bit of a a head case side, but we there are also a lot of other reasons why I think they're a fairly bad match for us. They're very physical, which we struggle with. They'll try and frustrate the game and make it into a physical contest, which we struggle with. They might try and compress us into the middle of the pitch, similarly to how Cardiff did, which again we struggle with. I don't think we're a good matchup for them at all, to be honest. And Welsh, yes, they might be a bit of mentally weak or whatever and not quite finishing their chances, but Welsh, there are some teams who do overperform their ex-team through a whole season through consistent good finishing, like us in our title season, and there are also some teams who underperform their ex-G all season through consistent bad finishing. I can't think of them, like Brighton famously under Graham Potter that year. The majority of times, XG does even itself out after a while. So I think, based on them being a bad matchup, physicality-wise, compression-wise, etc., and the fact that surely they've got to stop putting some of the chances away and how bad we are away from home, I think they'll beat us. I hope I'm wrong. I'm thinking 2-0 home win. I think we'll get maybe not a win, but maybe a draw away from home at some point in the coming weeks. But I don't think it will be this game. I'm probably kind of targeting Derby for that one, really, because I can't see us getting much at Leeds either. Our next two away games are at the Den, which we've not won since 1968, and Leeds, which we've not won since 1973. So if we break either of those runs, it will be very impressive indeed.
Very welcome. Go on, Adam. Give us your prediction while we're. Oh no, you want to save yours, won't you? You want to save yours for the written piece. I'll give you the opportunity if you want to give us a live prediction.
Sure. Yeah. Well, right now,
feel free to decline it.
No, I'll accept it. I'll accept it for now. I usually do. I will go and agree with Sam, and that is probably 2-0 Millwall most likely. But I can see a route that we get ourselves into the game. But I think, yeah, most likely is we get beat fairly comfortably.
I'm going to go away now and check what your predictions were at the start of the month in the predictions challenge and see if you guys were feeling more optimistic after we'd just beaten Luton and I asked you for your month's predictions back then. Maybe things have changed after that debacle yesterday. Just from any other business, Argyle's women won today 2-1 over Billericay in the FA Women's National League Cup and are now into the quarterfinals, which is good stuff. It's nice seeing the women's team also going to benefit from the Brickfields setup. And hopefully see them go from strength to strength. They already are, but I know the club has plans to get them slightly higher in the pyramid, and they're doing really well at the moment. And in connection with that, Aaron says Lulu Jarvis has been called up for Jamaica. Believe our first international since Poppy Wilson's call up for Wales, but don't quote me on that. Could be wrong. So I absolutely am quoting him on that. See him for any factual inaccuracies. Any other business, lads, than what's been mentioned?
Yeah, so I'd just like to say, I'm just letting know that thank you ever so much for giving me the opportunity to be on this podcast, and thank you to every viewer that has interacted with me and listened to my often incoherent rambles about Plymouth Argyle. So yeah, I will hopefully be involved at some point in the future on Argyle podcasts, but I might be on ones in the future should we have England podcasts again, or ones that don't involve the club in this current moment. But yeah, thank you very much, and it's obviously with regret that I step away, but I just think it's the right thing to do. So yeah, that's all I can say for now. And best of luck for with everything that you do, guys, in the future.
Thank you, mate. And I know that everybody here respects you for standing by your principles, and that's why you're a valued part of the team, even though you'll maybe be a silent partner for a little
Sorry,
bit. I'm paused because Aaron's just popped up. I was drunk and typed the wrong name tweet, which kind of ruined the sobriety of that little moment there. My bad, not Wilson. Poppy Soper. Okay, thanks, Aaron. See, glad I did quote him and not leave his name out of that as he asked. Yeah, I feel like we should give Finn a bit of a sign off, but also don't want to be a bit too sappy. We'll see him around. Those of us who are in the pod group chat will certainly hear him and his Shrek memes for a while too. But we hope, I'm sure the audience wish him well and hope he's around for some of the England stuff too. My throat is really struggled to hold up for this hour and a half, so I'm gonna sign off and go and bring up some lung butter. But while
thank you to Penn for hosting so well. You've clearly got the lurgy, and I think I can see you were struggling at points there, and I commend you for sticking with it and doing such a good job.
I was waiting for someone to hand back to me and me be off screen hacking sort of silently and sort of have to rush back to But thanks everybody. Hopefully the next one's going to be a bit more positive. Let's put this one behind us. Let's hope it was a blip. Let's hope we're going to see more Lutons, but even more QPR away would be welcome. But we will see. We'll be with you for every up and down of the rest of the season, whatever it may bring. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.